Hello folks and welcome back to SkinClub. My name is Ted, and as you can see, this is the first time that I'm actually doing one of those videos in here. Of course, if you wanna go and check out, you can go and check out the article that we released on SkinClub. That was written by me about the Falcons and the story of the organization. But as I was saying, as you can see, this is the first time you're seeing me on a video, and it's not going to be the last one as well. We're gathered up today to talk about ESL Pro League, talk about Stage 1, do a little bit of a recap, and then follow some of the storylines of what I think could be the most exciting teams progressing from Stage 1 into Stage 2 to follow that could make it all the way into the playoffs as well. So a big shout out to SkinClub for bringing me over and making all of this possible, for giving me yet another reason to talk about Counter-Strike and make even more content about it and bring forward some interesting opinions your way, hopefully. And yeah, with that being said, let's just delve right into it. Okay, so we're gonna start it off with a bit of a recap onto what happened. So for those of you that are not familiar, Stage 1 of ESL Pro League took place between the 1st and the 5th of March. You're probably watching this video on the 7th of March when the second stage kicks off. So all those games, it was a main Swiss, which is great to see out of EPL because it makes, or out of ESL because it makes... It makes it a lot more interesting, I think, to watch, and I think it freshens it up a little bit, and it gives a lot of cost to some of the best of threes that everyone is playing. Everyone knows exactly how many games they need to play and how many games they need to win in order to progress further. But yeah, I like the main Swiss being adopted for this one. I like the new format being introduced by ESL for this one. So a bit of a recap. We have Soul, GamerLegion, Eternal Fire, 3D Max, MIBR, Fury, TYLOO, and Pain making it through. Now, the reason I'm going through those teams is because I've picked a couple of them that I think could be the most exciting to watch in the next stage. Now, bear in mind, I am a tier 2 Counter-Strike commentator, so for me, a lot of those teams are going to be a lot more interesting than to a lot of other people. But I'm going to start it off by just saying that out of all those teams, there is, for example, Eternal Fire, which I'm not going to be speaking about, only because I feel like it's not surprising that they've been playing good Counter-Strike. I don't think Eternal Fire shocked anyone by making it through, and the fact that they were able to make it through 3-1, I mean, it was always going to be either a 3-0 or a 3-1 for them. I feel like this is just, it was pretty expected out of them, so we're not going to give them too much time, and we're not going to delve deep into what they've been doing well. We're going to leave that for another video and maybe for an article, but probably the one team that shocked everyone that couldn't make it through was Heroic. I guess this was the big surprise. Other than that, Mind Freak, Housebats, Lin Vision, NRG, FlyQuest, M80, and Amiga. I don't think it's that shocking. Sure, you could make a point that if TYLOO can make it through, then Amiga could, or M80 could, or FlyQuest could. They were really close playing against TYLOO, but for a lot of the other teams, I felt like things did go as people would expect them. But yeah, with that being said, Heroic with a bit of an off event, not playing the best Counter-Strike ever, was a little bit disappointing. But we're not here to talk about the disappointments. We're here to talk about the pleasant surprises of the event. And we're going to start it off with one team that I think caught everyone by surprise, with the fact that they were able not only to go through to the second stage of ESL Pro League, but the fact that they did it without dropping a single best of 3. We're, of course, talking about Seoul. We're talking about the Portuguese powerhouse, which just ended up changing 2 players after their run at PGO Cluj-Napoca. Obviously, everyone knew the news that Roman and Schur were getting removed even before the start of the event. They were surprisingly still able to make it into the playoffs after starting 0-2 in Cluj, and obviously they lost to FaZe in the playoffs, but that doesn't really that doesn't really, I feel like, take anything away from what they achieved in Cluj, and I still feel like they can be incredibly happy with that result. And now, on the back of announcing one of the craziest, I think, and the reason I say crazy, I don't think it's unreasonable. I think it was one of the least expected roster moves in the last couple of months. The fact that Azu and CShot leave Endpoint, they come into a Portuguese team, and this team just transitions to being an international team and an English-speaking team, which I think was already maybe in the process and in the talks with Golden being the coach. And obviously, all of you know that Golden is a Swedish legend. Unfortunately, doesn't speak Portuguese, so I guess we could all see that one coming with Golden staying around. But initially, when a lot of people looked at this team, including myself, I was thinking, okay, I know CShot, I know Azu. CShot is obviously an incredibly aggressive and incredibly gifted mechanically rifler. The same goes for Azu, but for both of them, this is going to be an incredible change. They're going into a team that doesn't have a lot of people that are used to playing or communicating in English as much, that have a really set way of approaching the game. So the question here was there going to be a bit of a cultural clash, I guess? And for those young guys as well, going into a team with people that don't have a lot of experience playing international Counter-Strike, but apparently it hasn't really been an issue so far. The fact that you already had Golden in there maybe means that he was able to, I guess, scout what was going on in the team and determine whether this team is ready to go international, and apparently his verdict was yes, because I wouldn't imagine that they would make those changes without him approving of them. But bottom line is, 12 days ago, Azu and CJOT get added to SAW, and then what we see out of SAW in Stage 1 of ESL Pro League is a 2-1 win over M80, is a 2-1 win over Furia, and a 2-1 win over Heroic just the other way around. They started off with a Heroic game. Now, the reason I'm not riding that hype wave of SAW so much is because I feel like there's going to be a lot of motivation, and a lot of those games were really close, and I don't think they were able to beat a single team that was on their A game. Heroic, we already spoke about. They had probably, I want to say, maybe their most off tournament so far in 2025 with this new lineup, and obviously there's some things to be fixed there, but they were able to take advantage of that. Fair enough to them. Furia has been a team that I haven't really been enjoying watching as much, regardless of the fact that Keserato has actually been playing some great Counter-Strike, and I think he was probably the main reason they were able to make it through to Stage 2. By far not the best Brazilian team anymore, in my opinion. I think there's two teams that are better than them right now. Soon might be three as well. And then M80, which had an alright event, but not the best ever. So for me, the fact that SAW did decide to go international is exciting. They did upset a lot of people by winning those games. There was a couple situations where they win their map pick, a couple situations where they lose their map pick. So there's been a mix of everything. We can't say it's been flawless. We can't say it's been worse for wear. We can say there was a lot of scrappy rounds and a lot of scrappy games. The one positive thing that I'm making out of this is now it feels like SAW have the firepower to actually be competitive on a bit of a higher level than before. One of the main criticisms or points of criticism that everyone had towards SAW when they lost you Jerks and Aristos was the fact that those were the only two guys in the region that felt like could bring in the firepower in the mix. And I'm not including Story in the conversation because obviously he's an OPER. We're talking rifle firepower. Story is a really solid OPER in my opinion, and I think he's a really smart one. But I think he's got the skill to compete on a higher level, definitely. So for a lot of people, the issue was, you're losing you Jerks and Aristos for whatever reason organizationally, and then you don't have anyone to actually step in and contribute with a little bit of firepower. And it was, I think after trying out, sure, and obviously Agile has kept his place in the team, but after trying out that newer iteration and seeing that in a lot of the games, even if you did have the right game plan, there was simply no one to actually shoot back at the enemy team, as silly as it might sound, you decide to go for two people that I think for everyone that has been following Tier 2 and Tier 3 online Counter-Strike in Europe will know are great aimers. Both CJOT and Azu. Azu's been a big star for the majority of his career. For CJOT, I'm actually incredibly excited, and I feel like one of the main points as well that I wanted to bring up when it comes down to SAW, and it's probably the last one I'm going to bring going forward, is the fact that I think CJOT as a player has an incredibly overlooked potential because of the fact that on endpoint, he might have not necessarily played the roles that he was playing, let's say, on Sprout when he got discovered by Barry. And we all know how good of a scout Barry is for young talent. CJOT had a lot of role changes. He had a lot of situations where he had to play some anchor spots. He had to go in first, then he couldn't go in first, then he got to give space to people. Ever since joining, Azu and CJOT have been the number 1 and number 2 stars of this team. And this is the one thing that I really appreciate what SAW are doing right now, because they know when they get those young guys to come into an already built-up system, I guess, in a team, they want to make them comfortable. They want to let them shine, and this is why you're bringing him over. You're bringing him over for them to be the X factor, and so far, from what I've seen, at least in the games of VPL, I feel like both Azu and CJOT feel comfortable. I think Story's bringing out good performances, and I feel like even in the prep department, the fact that they've had such little time, so I've been able to actually do really well and go into it with solid preparation. Now, the first round draw against Na'Vi, it's not a good one. I don't think they're beating Na'Vi. I still think that SAW could be one of those teams to actually get get 2 wins and somehow get into the final day, and then depending on the draw, they might actually surprisingly, shockingly make playoffs. It all depends on what draw they get, right? Because getting Navi first round is an absolute it's just a bullet in the foot, pretty much. It's just the equivalent of being shot in the foot in the first 15 meters of a marathon. You're not going to get a great start against Navi. I don't think they've got it in them. I don't think the honeymoon is that strong for that, but I still feel like in terms of the solid counter-strike that prep-wise I know Meteorus can bring to the table, and obviously Golden has been helping a lot in that sense. If Azu and CJ keep the good performance going, and if the vibes keep being good, I still feel like they could win some scrappy games. I don't see Seoul going in cleanly through the next stage. I don't think that 3-0... There's a lot of teams that have lost games in the stage 1... in the stage 1 stage of the ESL Pro League that I would say have a much bigger chance making playoffs. I would say Seoul is probably the one of the teams with the lowest chance of making playoffs out of everyone, but I still feel like they can pleasantly surprise, and I still think they can squeeze their way through in a really tough way. But yeah, probably not a 3-0, probably not a 3-1. I guess there is an opportunity for them to take it a little bit deep against some teams. The one concern that I have is that I'm not sure if the nuke is still as strong for Seoul, and it's still as a big as a punishment pick. But I guess it's all about the game plan. It's all about, you know, people getting to know what they're supposed to do. So if they've been able to actually get Azu and CJ up to speed, so to speak, with their nuke, I still feel like Seoul could be a really dangerous team. With that being said, because we don't want to make that video 40 minutes long, we're going to get over to the second team. And this is one that we're not going to spend too much time talking about, because obviously everyone now has been hyping up GamerLegion, and they're the other team that was able to go through 3-0. They were able to take down Energy, MIBR, and TYLOO. And the same issue that I guess I had with Seoul going through 3-0. Out of the 3 teams that GamerLegion take down in the stage 1, I feel like there is only one that could actually be used as a proof that GamerLegion is on the right track and they're playing some really good CS, and this is MIBR. I don't wanna obviously, no offense to TYLOO, they're even one of the teams that I'm going to be talking about in a little bit. But I feel like when you're playing against the TYLOO, it all comes down in the end of the day to firepower. And GamerLegion being a European team with so much experience, with guys like ZTR and Ash at the helm, and obviously Rez now joining in, I think tactically should be outmatching probably all of those teams. Maybe MIBR is the one that comes in the closest. Obviously, NRG did put up a fight as well. But again, for NRG, it's always a massive achievement, I guess, making it up to a tournament like EPL, because it's been a long time since we've seen that organization have any success. So I think it's normal for GamerLegion to be winning this game, even though NRG were able to pleasantly surprise a lot of people in that stage 1, I believe, with their performance. But MIBR, that 2-0, that was actually the game that made me scratch my head and say, you know what, on a good day, GamerLegion could stomp a lot of the teams that they should be beating. And obviously a lot of people are going to look at that performance from PR, who, by the way, has been absolutely fantastic. And every now and then it feels like we're just getting massive performances out of either PR or Rez, which I think is a really good sign. ZTR has never been an AFK damage-wise in-game leader, and I think he can always bring or pull his weight and bring something to the table. Slender's been playing well. Tolson has been getting much more freedom in that, I guess, I don't want to say newly created system, but he's been getting a lot of freedom alongside PR and Rez, and I feel like both ZTR and Ash have been trying, and Slen, by the way, have been sacrificing a lot, especially ZTR and Slen sacrificing a lot in the server to make sure that PR, Rez, and Tolson, that trio feels comfortable. Those 3 rifles that apparently want to be aggressive, that apparently want to be taking a lot of space, and apparently want to feel like they have the support of their teammates to go for moves, have been going for a lot of moves. And I think this is one of the main factors behind GamerLegion's success. This team has a lot of firepower. It might not be the most genius team in terms of on the fly decisions, but I still feel like ZTR is a really good IGL to come up with on the fly decisions, and I still think Ash is a really good coach in that department. But for GamerLegion, the good thing is that I feel like when I watch this team, there is a base tactically that they're going to cover most of the time, and then even if something doesn't click, they do have the firepower to compensate. This game against MIBR, which again is a team that was playing well in stage 1, I think made a lot of people hopeful, because they saw, first of all, a star-like performance from PR, who was able to drop a 24-7 on map 1, which was a 13-6 win on Ancient. But then even on Inferno, when they had a 5-7 deficit on the T side of Inferno, they were able to bring it back. And sure, you could say ZTR had a 21-10. He overperformed massively. It's all about It's all about the space that everyone else was able to create and the space that ZTR can create for himself. I just like the diversity that GamerLegion have in using different people for different plays. They have bar the Oper, they have 4 rifles that can be aggressive, that can be passive, that can clutch, that can entry, that can flash. They have everyone on this team can do anything pretty much, depending on how they want to build up the game plan. And this is why I think this is actually a pretty complicating team to play against, because they do have a lot of people that are polyvalent, I think was the word in English that I'm looking for. But yeah, they can do a lot of things. They're multifunctional is another way to say it. So yeah, I definitely think that GamerLegion is a dangerous team. Again, the main concern here is the fact that they weren't facing off against one of the bigger names, let's say, in the first stage. So they didn't play an Eternal Fire, for example, which I think would have been a massive result. They didn't play even 3D Max, I think would have been really significant if they're able to take down. So the fact that they beat MIBR 2-0, I still feel like makes me a little bit hopeful. And the fact that they get a first round draw against the Mongols, I don't think it's impossible. The Mongols are probably the better team with quite a margin. But I think on a good day, if everything works out for GamerLegion, they definitely are a team that could make it into the playoffs. And I'm not sure if they have the depth yet to actually make a deep run into the playoffs of ESL Pro League. But I would say that they are the first team that that I've really enjoyed watching so far, and I really believe could actually make a deep run and go through in the next round of ESL Pro League and into the playoffs. Now, with the third team we're going to be speaking about, and yeah, welcome to all the Frenchies. We're talking about the French boys. We're talking about 3D Max. Now, I'm going to have a little bit of bias here because I've always loved French Counter-Strike, and I've always loved those guys on the screen as well. 3D Max, similarly to some other teams, on the back of making a roster change, and their roster change was a bit of a shocking one as well, because you're bringing in Body. Obviously, he spent the last couple of months on Fnatic, did get removed at the start of the season when Fear came in, and you're bringing in Body not to be the in-game leader, but to be an aggressive rifle. You're bringing in Body to give him the freedom to be a star, which I think caught a lot of people off guard, because obviously you're removing Joko. Things seem to be working out, so the only logic for me behind that transfer is maybe there was some internal issues, right? Maybe sometimes people just don't get along, or they're not on the same page for some things, and it doesn't necessarily mean that they hate each other or they don't get along as people. Maybe they just had different views for some stuff. So you're bringing in Body, who, as far as we're concerned, seems to be on really good terms with the majority of the players. And I feel like this is a bit of a gamble. And the reason I think it's a bit of a gamble is because you can actually get a massive benefit from having another person like Body on the team. And I say another, he's actually the most experienced person on this team now. You already have Maka, who's in my eyes a really potent in-game leader while being an Oper as well. Lucky's had that stint with G2 a couple years ago, now a lot of years ago, in CSGO, when he did gather a lot of experience. So you're getting that perspective out of him. And now you have Body coming in, who's without a doubt the most seasoned veteran in that 3D Max team. So you are getting a lot of ideas. You're getting a lot of minds in the server. And if everyone is getting along well, this is only going to benefit guys like Exorcist, like Gravity, and in general the team and the speed that they're coming up with solutions for, right? But the one thing that could be the downside, and hasn't been the downside so far, is what happens if Body comes in and he's not able to bring in the firepower, right? Because in the end of the day, when a lot of people look at his team, they're like, okay, the in-game leader is Maka. He's the best performing player on the team. We're occasionally seeing good performances out of Lucky. Exorcist, in my eyes, by the way, is an incredibly underrated rifle for how flexible he is and how self-sacrificial he is as a rifle. Gravity has great potential, but hasn't been able to show consistency. So when you're making a roster change and you bring out Joko, who was supposed to be the star rifle or one of the star rifles, but again hasn't been able to find consistency, I think a lot of people expected that 3D Max would try and bring in someone to level up the firepower department, right? Bar only bringing in ideas. And the fact that Body has been shooting hard so far in ESL Pro League, I think is making a lot of people actually think that this could have been a good decision. Obviously, the fact that they didn't get out of groups in Cluj was a bit of a disappointment, but they did lose to Mouse, they did lose to Eternal Fire. The Soul game was the one that people were disappointed in, and I feel like I was completely shocked by it. But going into Pro League, you lose the first series against TYLOO, and that was a really precarious game, by the way. I watched that series, and I couldn't tell you what went right for 3D Max there. I could tell you a lot of things didn't go their way and TYLOO just ran them over, but I feel like this was maybe a mixture of 3D Max needing a little bit of a boost, right? I feel like this TYLOO game, if I could do that, I would just edit HLTV right now and put this TYLOO game in the PGA Occlusion Polka section here. I think what 3D Max needed was just to get one win, to get going. And then you're looking at some of the other results that they were able to post. You're looking at a clean 2-0 over Mindfreak, which was a complete necessity for them, and they couldn't afford to lose a map against the Aussies. They win that game, and from that point on, everything starts looking much better. A 13-5, 22-20, really close game against Heroic, by the way. And again, as we said, you're beating Heroic. You're not beating Heroic in their A game. Heroic were struggling that event, but this wasn't about playing Heroic, especially on Train. On Nuke, you completely stomped them. Body had a phenomenal series. Exorcist had a phenomenal series, but it was a team effort. Everyone was putting in great numbers. And then you go against M80, and you do exactly what you need to be doing if you're 3D Max, and you want to be one of the best tier 1.5 teams to be a gatekeeper. You annihilate the shit out of an M80 team that wasn't on their A game, and that if you want to show that you're still the 3D Max that can occasionally pick a best of threes against some of the best teams in the world, you should be beating, and you beat them. You beat the hell out of them. You played good counterstrike. Body again was absolutely unstoppable, going for the entries and aggressive plays. Gravity was insane. Maka was calling out of his mind and hitting all the op shots that he needed. This is a team that is incredibly difficult to play when they're in the driver's seat. And I feel like now we're looking at a 3D Max that is gathering up that momentum. Again, for them, similarly to the conversation we're having with Sol, where they get to play against Navi in the first round. The fact that you play against Eternal Fire, I think it's a bit of a tough one. But obviously, all the best teams in the world are in that next stage of ESL Pro League, so you can't really avoid it. I still believe that 3D Max are in a position right now to put up a good fight. And historically, you're looking at the best of threes they've played so far against Eternal Fire this year. They've always been able to get an Inferno out of them. So I feel like they don't have the worst veto against an Eternal Fire. I think they can still put up a fight. It all comes down to the fact that Anubis, I think, has been a little bit more disappointing for 3D Max than maybe they would expect. But I strongly believe that 3D Max have a good veto against Eternal Fire. And I feel like 3D Max is that type of a team that I'm not sure it's going to work in the long term. Because I'm still not sold, even though I love Body as a player and I like the majority of the players. I'm still not sold on the fact that this change specifically is going to be what makes 3D Max a lot better of a team. But I still believe Body can shoot heads. I still think he brings in a lot of drive and a lot of firepower and a lot of nice mood and vibes in the team and a lot of good opinions on things. I believe that 3D Max is going to be probably one of the most secure teams to out of the first stage to actually make it through, alongside Eternal Fire, obviously. So even if 3D Max started off with a loss, I wouldn't be too worried. I still feel like they can bring it through and power their way through. So we're gonna keep it going. Those were the teams that I think will probably make it into the playoffs or have the biggest chance of making it, with Saul, of course, being a bit of on the side. The next incredibly pleasant surprise out of the first round, and this was probably the most pleasant surprise out of the first round, and we're actually going to start it off by reading out a tweet that I wrote a couple days ago. The last time TYLOO won back-to-back best of threes against two non-Asian/Australian teams on LAN was back in 2019 when Ben Ted was still on the lineup. More so, the last time they beat two European teams back-to-back on LAN was at the Toyota Master Bangkok 2018 when they beat AGO and Pro 100. This is how long ago TYLOO were able to get back-to-back wins against European teams on LAN. And now they 2-0 3D Max and Eternal Fire in back-to-back days, which was incredibly amazing. The fact that they still lost against GamerLegion and MIBR, the series against FlyQuest was a bit of a tough one. I'm not gonna lie to you. I thought TYLOO had no chance to actually make it through. I thought the moment they lost against GamerLegion, there was no way they were making it through to stage 2. So the fact that they're able to get that close win against FlyQuest, incredibly impressive. Do I think TYLOO is going to be a team that's going to go into the next round guns blazing and actually upset teams like Spirit and some of the other top dogs? Probably not. I would still, if they have a rematch against, let's say, the loser of Eternal Fire and 3D Max, wherever it might be, I would still put my money on Eternal Fire or 3D Max to win this one, probably. Because I feel like it's a different stage. Now, both Eternal Fire and 3D Max are not going to be as flabbergasted by the level of Counter-Strike that TYLOO can bring to the table. And I still feel like TYLOO are not doing anything special in terms of the Counter-Strike they're bringing forward, but they are incredibly skilled. And this is the one thing I want to give TYLOO. That's, I think, the one reason why they've been such an exciting team to watch is because the individual skill there is incredibly high. And they're just winning all the fights that they need to be winning. But I think the game against MIBR that they lost was a great example of what happens when the individuals are firing, but they're just a better team on the other side. You just get outclassed. And I feel like, unfortunately, this is what's going to happen to TYLOO in the next stage. I still find the team incredibly exciting, and I still was really happy to see them play well, because I think this organization, for everyone that's been watching Counter-Strike and CSGO for a longer time, does have a lot of sentiment to it. And it just makes me happy seeing that, again, there is another Asian team and there is a Chinese team going out and making moves in international events. And it's not just the Mongols, obviously coming out of Mongolia, but it's not just them from the Asian region being able to actually make something, although the difference between the two teams in my eyes is still pretty big. And yeah, as much as the Mongols I consider as one of the best playing teams in the world, it's not quite the same with TYLOO, but they are still fun to watch. And yeah, the last team we are going to be mentioning here is MIBR. Now, the reason I'm mentioning MIBR, and I'm not mentioning Fury, I'm not mentioning Pain. I love Pain. I'm a massive Pain fan, but I feel like with Pain, there's been a couple negative signs and a little bit of frustration, and maybe they can turn it around. Maybe they can do better than MIBR in the second stage. You never know. MIBR get a really difficult draw against Vitality to start it off, and Vitality is probably the best team in the world right now. So the reason I'm picking MIBR is because I feel like with them, there's a lot less uncertainties to the floor that they can show. And I think that previous stage was a great example. Obviously, for a lot of people that might not be aware, MIBR did make a change as well before the start of this event. They excused upon drop out of the lineup. Now you're coming back to playing with Exit, Luca, Ozzy, Save, Burns, and Insani. Exit is IGLing again. And it feels like things are a little bit more consistent, although we're just talking about 4 best of 3s. And again, it's the same point we made about some of the other teams that we spoke about. Stage 1 was incredibly entertaining, but there isn't that type of a result that you're going to look at and you're going to say, oh shit, those guys can play some incredibly sound Counter-Strike. What we can say about MIBR though, and the reason that, again, we're talking about let's say a 2-0 over TYLOO. TYLOO were really hot on their heels the moment that MIBR hit them like that, right? TYLOO were on the back of getting the back-to-back wins against 3D Max and Eternal Fire, getting a map off of an incredibly well-playing GamerLegion, and MIBR just went into that game and outclassed them. This is the one reason I'm incredibly comfortable with saying that MIBR are going to do well in the next stage as well. They did the same against Furia. A Furia team that has had a well-performing K-Serato and Yuri so far this event. MIBR just made it look like they were the better team. Not individuals-wise. We're not talking about firepower. We're not talking about Insani or Luca Ozzy going crazy or Save playing the game of his life. We're talking about the individual stepping up when needed. But in general, the game plan looking good. In general, MIBR trying to play a much more European type of Counter-Strike than a Brazilian type of Counter-Strike. And sure, you did get smashed by GamerLegion, but I think that at this point, a lot of people have already, I guess, gotten used to the fact that MIBR every now and then just go into an event, they play really well, and then there's going to be that occasional best of 3 where nothing works and they just get completely stomped. Other than that, I don't see the same thing that happened in Cluj, where they just beat only the Imperial Valkyries and they lost to Astralis, 3D Max, and Wildcard happen again. I feel like MIBR, even if they started off badly against Vitality, could show a good level of Counter-Strike. And I feel like right now, especially with 9Z being a little bit lackluster, maybe you could make a point that MIBR is the best Brazilian team, and that wouldn't sound too outrageous to everyone watching. But I definitely feel like Fury is the number 3, and this entire video has just become a massive Furia hate gathering, I guess. But I actually like the players. I like York. I just don't like the Counter-Strike that the team is playing. But yeah, those were the teams that I think are going to be the most surprising ones. And well, not are going to be, but the teams that did surprise a lot of people pleasantly in the first round. I think the best performing that people might have not expected to be the best performing. Now going into stage 2, and this is how we're going to put an end to this video for it not to become too long. I'm going to give you some quick fire predictions. I feel like it's going to be a really difficult start for a lot of the guys that made it through to the second stage from stage 1. I feel like Spirit are just going to fly over TYLOO, and bear in mind this is a main Swiss stage again. There's a lot of chances, but everything is best of 3. I feel like Spirit are not dropping a best of 3 against TYLOO. I think Vitality are probably not dropping a best of 3 against MIBR, even though this is probably one of the BO3s that I'm going to be watching with a lot of interest, but Vitality and Jenna were an incredibly good team in the group stages, and especially now, as I said, I think they're the best playing team in the world, so I don't see that one going wrong. The Mongols, GamerLegion, and Eternal Fire 3D Max games are incredibly interesting to me. I feel like GamerLegion could definitely beat the Mongols right now, even though I'd say it's probably a 60-40 in terms of the Mongols. And then Eternal Fire 3D Max for me is a straight up 50-50. I feel like this is probably the most evened up matchup in this entire stage, or this entire round, sorry. There is a couple others that could go wrong, but I think Eternal Fire 3D Max is going to be a good game, and it probably goes 3 maps again, and it probably ends up... My prediction is going to be a win for 3D Max, because I feel like Eternal Fire now are in a position where they could drop a best 3, and 3D Max have been able to push them really close a couple of times. So I would put my money on the Frenchies to finally make it work. Then I would say Navi, beat Saw, Mouse, destroy Furia probably. G2 Pain is going to be an interesting one, because Pain could play some great Counter-Strike, but they could also be incredibly frustrated, and they can lose a 13-1 map to a side like Limb Vision. So I still think I would go for G2, although I really want to see Pain do well, but I'm not sure this is the event for them to do well in. I still will say G2 probably win this, and then for the Falcons Liquid, I think right now Falcons is the obvious one to go with, and I haven't really been a fan of this iteration of Liquid. So yeah, this is how we're gonna put an end to it. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. It was a bit more all over the place, because there was a lot of things to talk about and a lot of things to discuss, a lot of things to give my opinion on, but we couldn't even delve deeper into a lot of the topic because there was just so many teams to mention. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this one. Again, a big shout out to SkinClub for making all of this happen. I hope you liked it, and yeah, you want to make sure to go and check out some of the other videos and articles that not only me, but a lot of other esports personalities, casters, analysts, some player legends as well, and coaching legends have been putting out there recently, because there's been a lot of content going your way from the side of SkinClub, and we all hope that you've been enjoying it. Have a great night. My name's Ted. You were with my, I guess, my pre-stage 2 ESL Pro League video. And I hope you enjoyed it. Maybe I'm going to see you again after EPL is done to make a bit of a recap and see what happened, and talk about how Vitality trashed everyone and won yet another event. But we're going to see about that. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye, and see you soon.